Brooke's a paediatric emergency nurse and research coordinator at the emergency department in Logan. And since completing her postgraduate certificate in paediatric acute care and through experience in paediatric emergency, Brooke has developed a wide variety of clinical research interests, especially cannulation, mental health, and pain management. Thank you, Brooke. And just, if you do have any questions for Twitter, then just tag in @CodeBlueNursey. Thanks.
Thank you for the welcome. Who here really loves cannulation? I mean, a little bit more to the point. Who loves it when the cannula falls out? Has anyone here ever had that cannula that just won't stay stuck? Let me tell you about a time. My 2.5-year-old patient, she's cute as a button. Let's call her Elsa. She comes in with mum. She hasn't been walking. Mum's carrying her everywhere. She's a little bit fussy on her food. She wants to do things, colour in, do some things, but just not with the enthusiasm, and she just won't walk. The decision was made that we needed to take bloods because after all, it had been 3 days of no mobilising. I put on the numbing cream. We set the timer. I go set up the cannulation trolley. I'd made quite the game of it and it was fun. Now, although Mum was hesitant, she still came to the procedure room. They're pretty much all hesitant at this time. We get her into the procedure room. We wrap Elsa up, put her on the bed. We've got Peppa Pig playing on the TV, all about patient choice, my least favourite show. She's kicking, she's crying, she's screaming. It's a horrible experience, as the 2.5-year-olds commonly do. We get the cannula in first go. Thank you, doctor. I jump in, I quickly secure that. We've got an arm board down, we've got the sock over the top. Everything's looking hunky-dory. It's time to get her out of the scary procedure room back to her bedside. She gets back in the room, lifts her arm up to give Mum that comfort cuddle, and boom, out comes the cannula. All I have time to do at this time is to stop the bleeding, put on a pressure pad, and wait for the bloods to return. I don't know about your department, but a Monday, typical Monday afternoon, I had what felt like 100 other pressing tasks to do. Fast forward a couple of hours, the bloods are back, the doctor's tapped me on the shoulder. Brooke, we've got to do it again. Of course, the bloods were deranged. Take 2, we're back in the procedure room, getting the cannula all set up. This time, Mum's looking a little shaky. That's okay, we continue through. We get the cannula in, I've jumped in, I've wrapped it all up. Mum's on the floor. Could this day get any worse? I mean, I don't like to toot my own horn, but as a peds emergency nurse with years of experience under my belt, I felt like I'd had my own share of securing cannulas. So I had to stay behind on this shift and fill out all the mandatory reporting that comes because Mum had fallen and hit her head on the floor. It was a great evening shift. I go home, but of course I'm back on an early the next morning. But in my research assistant role that I just got recently, pretty new in the role, late early, a little bit sleep deprived, I get a lovely phone call from the Paediatric Research Coordinator of Queensland. She's checking in on me just to see I'm settling in, but she also seems to be fishing around for some research grant ideas. Brooke, have you got any ideas of things that you want to change as a clinician on the floor? Boy, did she hear about it. That last cannula that broke this camel's back. I said, there has to be a better way to make them stick, right? She said, that's a great idea, let's do it. Before I knew it, I'm sitting around the table with the Queens of Vascular Access, and we're writing a grant application. I'm talking to lots of experts in the field who would soon be my mentors to get me through for this extremely nervous novice researcher. You see, what had happened was that the Emergency Medicine Foundation had opened up a new round, and this time the round was open to any health professional. That's allied health, nurses, any clinician could be the principal investigator of a grant. Awesome. You see, from here, don't be fooled. I had no idea the mess I'd got myself into. I just wanted to make cannulas stick better. So the grant round closes, and you're not going to believe it. this primary care nurse, with her ELSA experience of the cannula being lost, still running through her veins, was the first nurse to receive this grant in the grant round. Pretty. Thank you. All this with a one-day-a-fortnight research assistant side gig. Now, don't be fooled. Still didn't know the mess that I got myself into. There was a lot to be learned. Along came my team, so I had this amazing superhero team that you're seeing up here, and I quickly learned how important it was to have those players that could strengthen all my weaknesses. It was important to have people that were experienced, that came with networks, that came with the attitude of wanting to work hard and work together in the same direction as me. So we had the venous access experts, we had biostatisticians, health economists, we had bedside clinicians, and little old me. I just wanted to change the world. Oh boy, did I have a lot of learning to do. This primary care nurse with the ELSA experience of not being able to keep the cannula stuck had a lot of learning to do. So moving along with Amanda's talk about some of the parts here, obviously I'm looking at the securement side with my study, and it was really important for me to secure. So I had to do a little bit of learning, and I want to do a little bit of learning with you and see how much you know as well. So how many of these cannulas actually fall out before treatment ends, do you think, here? And I'm going to ask just for a cheeky show of hands. So put your hand up if you think it's 1 in 7. 1 in 3? 1 in 9? 1 in 4? Yeah, bit of a mix. It's 1 in 4. So 25% of those cannulas fall out before we've even got to end of treatment. It's quite significant. We need to do better. What about the peripheral cannulas that are inadequately secured? So that's us securing those cannulas down and it falls out because we just haven't done the right or good enough at this time. Show of hands again for 33%, 71%, 46%, 84%, 71%. It's a huge number that are not staying in because we haven't secured them good enough. We need to do better. And lastly, let's think about this last thing. How many minutes do you think it takes to cannulate my child? This is your average child, and I'm not talking, some we can get in first go. Some take us, hopefully not 8 times, but I did see that once. But on average in Australia, this is statistics from Australia. Let's see a show of hands for 41 minutes, 40 minutes, 43 minutes, 48 minutes. I can see that you've all had a little bit of experience with this, and it's 41 minutes. That's taking my little Elsa from her bed into the procedure room, cannulating her, and back to her procedure room. So when I think about this, I also don't think that this is just one person cannulating this child. It's never, right? We know that there's at least 2. Often, if they're really super strong, there could be 3 people in doing that cannulation. And then let's think about it again. We're talking about doing it second, hopefully not more than a third time. That's a lot of valuable minutes as well as stress and everything for the family that we could be working harder on. So we've all learned a little bit here about cannulas, that none of us really love to stick them in and stick them down, but if we're doing it, we want to do a good job. So what we did was turn Mr. Messy here into the PreCare baby. Now, just because I don't want to get this wrong, I am going to read this word for word because I think it's pretty important what we did. So we had a 3-arm parallel group superiority randomised control trial of 460 children to compare the effectiveness of 2 advanced peripheral IV cannula dressings and securement methods in comparison to standard care to maintain cannula function. Phew, we've sure come a long way from the little nurse that just wanted to make Elsa's cannula stick. It came time to rolling out the education in the department, and for those of you that hadn't had research experience, I'm not sure how much you would have known, at this time the constant throwback was 3 arms? What? Kids don't have 3 arms. And why would you want to stab them 3 times? So obviously we had to do a little bit of deeper education. Essentially we were pinning our standard care, the Tegaderm advanced dressing with those cute little teddy bears. That was standard care for us. So we were pinning that against 2 other methods. So the first contender there was the Sorbifuse Shield dressing, which was a Centurion medical product. And Although this wasn't used in our department at the time, it hadn't been used in children's emergency, it had been trialled through adult emergencies, and it had also been used for the central line access in children. So we knew that it had been used safely. Our next contender was that same dressing, so that Sorbifuge Shield dressing, and we used that with the Secure Pore or IV tissue adhesive by Adhesion. Now, this tissue adhesive was pretty special because it was the first TGA-approved glue to use on the securement of catheters or cannulas here in Australia. Easy choice to use it, right? And to make sure everything was standard, all of the arms got the same style of things. So we put on a Cavalon barrier wipe before the dressing, and then we secured it in the normal way with our arm board, the wraps, and the little sock over top to hold it all into place. So they were all fair. Now, we thought we had a great methodology. We had a fail-proof flow. We had inclusions and exclusion criteria, and we were set to go. We had the kids with 3 arms. We were ready to roll. And those 460 kids that we had, we thought that we could enroll them all in 9 months. Easy, right? We'd done our first rotation of education. We had some really, really keen doctors on the floor. We had some championed up nurses. All set. Any of those that have done research here might have the same experience, and obviously our start date did get delayed. But that's okay, because if you haven't realised yet, I'm sure it's still all right to go. Fast forward a few months and we got to start. We recruited our first patient. March 2020, and everything that followed. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that COVID was rubbish, but really, our studies were hurting. Across the 2 sites, we were struggling to get the numbers that we wanted to get. It was a range of things. We had that lower threshold that we didn't want to cannulate children. We wanted them out of the hospital. We just wanted to send them home. We had real problems with staff retention, burnout, but in fact, we also had lower numbers of presentations coming to the hospital just to start with. So we were struggling, but I am that glass full kind of girl, and we're still all good, right? We were really fortunate in our department that we only got stopped for a small research hiatus in comparison to the rest of the world that actually got stopped for a long time. So we were very, very lucky and got to continue. Now, as it did come along, we were getting to a finalising numbers. We weighed up our pros and cons to think, should we keep going? And although we didn't get to our full 460 numbers, we did make the decision to stop the study. After all, funding guidelines, couldn't keep the study going forever. So we decided to stop. And although we didn't get to our 460, we did get to 383 during the middle of a global pandemic. But wait. 383 patients looking at a securement of paediatric cannulas makes PreCare the biggest in the world. Yeah, it did. So from this little nurse that just wanted to keep Elsa's cannula stuck, through to getting the EMF grant in the first multidisciplinary health grant round, through to leading a superhero team into the world's largest IV paediatric securement study. I could hardly believe it. So as things finalised, my superhero team, who actually mentored me through all the way, had started having some conversations with me. Now, Brooke, remember, not all research comes out the way that you want it. Sometimes it's just not the right study product. We might need to try other things. It's a Friday evening. I'm sitting with my local team. We're doing the data cleaning with all the experts. The larger team, the whole big superhero team, are all on standby. We're waiting for the unboxing. You know, at Christmas time, you're a bit excited. This year, am I getting the socks and jocks that I usually do? No change. Or this year, is this the year that I get the box of dreams where I'm going to make the change? My tissues are on standby. But I have to declare before I go any further, this is preliminary data. It hasn't been peer-reviewed, it hasn't been published. So for any of those that are on SoMe now, I do ask, as an exclusive for you guys, don't forget the bubble here, that we stop sharing for now. I appreciate that. So with my tissues on standby, I had myself completely convinced that there was no change to come. And I was right. To do the study, that is. We've seen statistical significant change in the third arm, which was the Secure Port IV dressing with the Sorbeview Shield, Secure Port IV glue with the Sorbeview Shield dressing, significantly reduced failure compared to standard arm that we all know. We went on further, and it was a little bit exciting as we went through the data for me, because I don't know about your department, but sometimes our ED and our kids' wards, they don't always love the change, so new change is not always accepted. So we had asked the question about staff satisfaction on removal of the dressing and the cannula. And while there was no significant statistics saying that one dressing was better than the other, they were all liked, and they were all liked equally. Whew, they didn't hate the products. I'm going to leave you with this, and maybe for your last chance for all those pearls that you could win those things, you could have one of these. That you can actually lead from any level. A good clinical question comes from any clinician, as long as you have the belief of best patient outcomes. Your team is absolutely essential, it's everything. And that's the team that I'm talking about from conception to completion, your team that's on the floor that gets the study alive, and the team that are in the background at home, your friends and your families that really pump you up. And lastly, that the Secure Port IV glue and the Sorbeview Shield dressing are going to make a difference, and we are going to secure Elsa's cannula. Thank you.
Absolutely amazing, Brooke. Thank you. I'll resist the temptation to give you a rendition of Let It Go, but feel free to sing it in your heads. And hopefully we won't get let go of Elsa's cannulas anymore. Is there any questions from the floor?
Thanks for that. I have two questions.
Sure.
What is the costing difference between using your new method versus the standard teddy bears? And second question, if it's a cannula that we've put in ED and it comes out 2 to 3 hours later, what is the process for removing that glue, and is it more difficult in those early stages?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Obviously, with the preliminary data, there is going to be a lot of costing breakdowns coming from the beautiful health economist. I guess the price difference, can I say how much difference there was? I guess is there was $10 difference. It wasn't a significant amount of difference, but the overall costing is huge. So watch this space, because we broke down every single costing that took from your paper underlay through to everything. So there is a costing analysis coming out of that. The question about your glue is a great one, because that was constantly something that was asked when we were putting it in. And I think the little example in the picture was my son. And while he was no problems with cannulas, no problems with wrapping, he actually broke down and cried because I put the glue on. And the reason he cried is because he thought it was going to stay forever. So he actually didn't mind all the other processes, no problem. But glue, that was the problem. And when we put it in and we went to remove the first few on the ward, the actual problem was that we went with the practice that we'd normally done, was using the remove, I don't know, patches, if anyone's used those. And what had happened was, it wasn't about the glue, is that, it interfered with removing the dressing, so we learnt a better process was water. But when you did the tensility of pulling the cannula that way with the glue, that stopped it from pulling out. But the minute you raised it upwards, it just peeled off, and it wasn't actually a longer process. So the whole process took an extra 20 seconds, 30 seconds that I have to time, so... Does that answer your question?
Brooke, congratulations on so many fronts.
Thank you.
Just a question. Sometimes when we do research, we have a Hawthorne effect. Just by doing the research, things improve. I'm interested in, did you find improvements in any of the other techniques from what the baseline would be?
I think because the dressing, the new dressing on its own that we were introducing didn't make statistical significant changes. It had been some change, but what the knock-on effect was that the doctors that were using it, that really, really loved the study, were cutting the tegaderms and trying to apply it with the two pieces like that you've seen in the dress. Because they really liked that interlocking sort of thing. So even before like the analysis was done, there was that change coming from the team.
I suppose my question was more from the standard care. Just people routinely using Cavalon and actually applying that all the time and doing it a consistent way. Did you actually get improvements?
I think initially in the very beginning, but it obviously went through waves. Like if you ever experienced that rotation of doctors, so every time we educated, I think that experience goes up every time, and then it sort of laxes off a little bit. It also helps that in our department we have paediatric only nurses in the area, and our department's a mixed department, so that makes it quite unique in that sense, I guess, because in those mixed departments, not everyone's experienced with peds, but they come in and do one random shift here. So having that peds experienced nurses sort of helped promote that standard care, so we didn't have too many flicks.
Thank you. Is there any more questions from the floor? Thank you so much, Brooke.